right, here we are.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to our podcast with Phil and Johnny, Voices of the Village. We are delighted to have local legend Jason Clifton in the house today. Jason and I have become friends over the years. He is an artist, a provocateur. He's a super interesting guy, and I'm stoked to have him on our show. And I think that you will be too once you hear him talk a little bit about his beliefs and his ways of being. Phil, get us started.
Okay, Jason, I haven't met you before, so I'm really happy that you're here. Happy you're
Thanks.
participating in this.
Glad to be here.
And as we said earlier, we have three basic questions for you. Since we're looking at the community and community development, one of the first ones is, what inspires you about Ellensburg? And the second one is, what challenges do you see? And the third has to do with, how do we know when we're successful as a community? You've got a lot of beginnings of things you're doing in the community. So tell us a little bit about what you like about Ellensburg, what inspires you, and what kind of things you're up to.
I'm up to a lot of stuff, but the first thing, what inspires me about Ellensburg, interestingly, like I wasn't that inspired by Ellensburg to begin with. And I found the lack of inspiration inspiring.
Is that
right? Like the fact that there wasn't a lot going on here, right? Like I grew up in California. I grew up where skateboarding and graffiti and just like a whole other culture exists in America as American culture. And then I came here and that didn't exist here.
Oh yeah.
And there wasn't as many, and there just wasn't anything like that here. And so since I came here and like brought myself with me, and the fact that it wasn't here already, it inspired me to like just be me. And I had found a place to be me. Right. So that was what was inspiring by Ellensburg. It wasn't necessarily itself that was very inspiring. It was uninspiring. And it gave me a place to
be inspired.
Right. Right. A place to actually grow and
to create inspiration.
Yeah. To be an example. Right. Yeah. Because there wasn't anything here. So I had to take it upon myself to be the example of what I came from here. And
how many years have you been in Ellensburg?
I came here in 1990. The first time I came here in 1990.
Oh yeah.
So what are some of the examples of being an example? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I came here as a skateboarder. I've been skateboarding already since like '88. And there was no skate park here. So we made one. The few skateboarders that were here, like we were getting arrested all the time for skateboarding at Safeway on curbs, and like we needed a skate park. So we got together and we created one. And now there is one here. And then there's a second one. I was able to paint a mural that like represented the heritage of skateboarding at that skate park. So now we have that. That didn't exist here before. So it was inspiring to be able to be kind of like, not like an emissary of it, but set an example. Like if you guys want there to be something, then you have to do it, right? At a point, it becomes your duty to become what you want to become or see what you want to see. Gandhi thing, right? Be the inspiration. Yeah, be the thing. Be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
It's up to every person to do that. It's not up to anybody else to do those things for you. So it was a cool place to be able to grow into myself. Gave me the opportunity to do that. It had been a lot harder to do that in California where there's so many people doing the same thing. You really have to stand out further. Here it was big fish in a small pond. So it was a lot easier to be expressive without having a lot of things challenge you, except for the community itself, right? Like the ruralness of the community, the westernness of the community challenged it at first, but I'm just like not a bad person. So I think it's like changes the idea of like what the kind of people are that do skateboarding or graffiti art or any kind of like urban activity like that. I think people see those kind of people in a certain way, and so they just judge them. And it was cool to be able to come here and be like, I'm not that stereotype. I'm something different, yet I do that.
Yeah.
Right. So to set an example that like can dispel those kind of misconceptions.
So say a little bit about your art.
I mean, I grew up as a graffiti writer. Like I learned to write graffiti in California. I got put on by older people that were doing it, so I kind of like you get like trained in a way, a street training sort of, where like you want to do it. You kind of start hanging around the people that are doing it. I was already skateboarding, and skateboarding and graffiti music kind of go hand in hand. Some of the other skateboarders were writing graffiti. So I just started skating and writing with them, and they kind of just like put me on to how it's done. Everybody starts off bad. Everybody wants to be a tagger. Everybody wants fame or whatever. And then you learn like there's some ways, there's some customs, there's traditions, there's techniques and styles that like show the rest of everybody where you are, right, and the respect that you have for the thing. So I grew up doing that, and just it became a part of my core person, respecting the heritage that I was now representing and writing the history for. Right, we're writing our own history as we go. So it's really important to like make sure that like I was respecting the heritage, respecting where things came from, and also being white inside of that culture, being brought into it. I had to respect that part too, right? That I was being brought into something. So I take all that with me with my art. I try to just put my entire heart into it. I do a lot of portraits of people that inspired me, but also just inspired the culture. And so celebrating our heritage and our history and continuing to write the history as we go. Why I make the art that I do. Right? Like,
talk to me about the alley wall of Gerald's, because when I think about your art, I often drive by that place or walk by that place, and I see that art, and I think of you and the other artists that are associated with that space.
Yeah. That was cool. So a friend of mine from Fresno, California, Joe Dela Cruz, shout out, approached Rolf about that wall back in like 1998.
Okay.
And we started painting on the other side of the building before they built Weinigers there. And then they put those big containers up. Dodo moved back to Fresno. And so we stopped painting there. It organically moved around the back into the alley because people just started writing back there. And then I reapproached Rolf about it and just kind of got it sanctioned to be a free graffiti wall with permission. Yeah. Right. So people can go in there and just like all they have to do is go and ask Rolf for permission, and they can go back there and paint. But you can go paint whatever you want there. It's a great spot to just practice. It's cool to see people coming from other places. We got it pretty known. Some of my friends from Yakima come out. Some of my friends from Seattle come out and paint there. It's cool. It's just a place. Yeah, it's just a free place to paint. You need more of that, right? Like if you don't do that, then graffiti writers practice on wherever they can.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So it's cool to have free walls where people can actually just come learn and hang out and like and not have to worry about getting in trouble. It's like skateboarding back in the day when we only could skateboard in the streets. You're always gonna get kicked out. The cops are always gonna come. Right. That's always part of it, and it was a huge bummer because it like hindered the whole growth process. So having a free place to skate or a free place to paint, right, is like gonna progress people. Yeah, lawfully. Yeah, it's gonna encourage people to come actually paint and learn to do it well, and then they'll find other ways to paint murals or find sanctioned places to do it.
Such as your house.
Yeah. I got real lucky there. Yeah. Well, my landlord, Trevor File, his dad Ken File, owned the Derigo building. Still owns it, but when that burnt down, I lost my entire life in that fire. 2007. Really? Yeah. So I lost everything that I.
You had a studio there.
Yep, I had a studio there. All my equipment, all the music that I was touring with, all the stuff that I'd written was there, burnt down, and got none of us really got anything out of it. The building wasn't insured or anything. So years later, I'm now renting from Ken's son, and I was painting that house, and I just walked by one day with the can and was like, I think I was painting my little mailbox out front with a black can of spray paint. And I just painted the whole house white. And I was walking back to the door, and I was just like walking past a giant white wall with a can in my hand. I just started painting, and then all of a sudden it became something. And then a neighbor said something like, "Oh, that's really cool." Then it just went from there. It's like I got real lucky that I was able to keep going with it. Yeah. Totally.
Well, for those of you who are watching, listening, his house is a masterpiece. It is beautiful. And then you've got the skate park or the skate bowl.
I built a zipper bowl in the backyard. Yeah, concrete skateboarding bowl. Yeah, totally.
In your yard.
In the backyard. Yeah, I did do that. Yeah. We did that during COVID with a bunch of skateboarders got together. So that worked for Grindline and worked for the companies that build professional concrete skate parks in the state. They came and helped me with all of our STEMI check money. We put it together and just made us a cool spot to have a community spot for skateboarders. Like this, the park is cool. The park is very outdated. The metal's a little dangerous. And concrete parks have completely taken over how skateboarding is done, especially in the Northwest. So we just did our own DIY thing in the backyard.
I mean, I may not look like this, but my wife and I owned a toy store and we sold skateboards.
Cool.
And I probably put together a couple hundred of them. And I built a half pipe in my backyard.
Sweet.
That was back in around 1990.
Yeah. Now it's on Pine, right?
I was on the house place on Pine, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Did your boys skateboard?
Right, yeah, two of them did.
Really?
Skateboarded quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, we're done.
Huh. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Skateboarding is, it's man.
But talking about your art a little bit, we had an interesting talk by an Ellensburg Police Department woman talking about the difference between graffiti and gang tagging.
Mm-hmm. Talking about Ellie?
Yeah.
What
I was surprised about was how detailed the information is and how supportive she and it seemed like the police department are about graffiti and graffiti art.
Right.
Is that kind of unusual?
It's not at all. So the crew that I write with in Yakima, so Yakima is much bigger. There's 150,000 people there. The gang graffiti situation is wrapped up in a lot of the gang activity in Yakima. So the gangs will like write on things, whatever they want to, but then the crew of us get hired to come out and cover up that, right, with actual pieces, characters, whatever. And the gang graffiti doesn't come back, right? Because we're in the same world. They kind of have a respect for us. They want fame. That's their whole point, is they want fame. If they know that they're going to come right on somebody else's graffiti that's clearly good, not only are they not going to get fame, they're going to be like lower, right, in the street world. So it does go hand in hand, but they're different, right? Like like the gang stuff and tagging is its own thing, and then graffiti is its own thing. They're intermingled in the same world, but when we come through and like paint over something like that, like they don't come back, right? Cool. Because we're intertwined with it somehow. There's some kind of a street respect thing there. It's not that we like hate those guys or whatever, but there's a progression that has to occur mentally with the whole life. And if you remain there in that part, then you're not really growing. So it's cool to be able to make something great and get people inspired to like kind of go this other route with it, right? Like hopefully our actual graffiti has inspired some gang people to stop doing that and get better or mature some way or develop a skill. Even so their mentality may be the same, like they've grown personally because they've developed some kind of skill by seeing that this is like down here and I'm trying to get up here. Right? Does that make sense? Like,
it does make sense, yeah.
Jason, you spend a lot of time in the downtown. You know, you and I often run into each other at the coffee shop or on the sidewalk, wherever it may be. And I'm curious, what do you see especially in the core of downtown Ellensburg? Maybe not necessarily in the Kittitas County, but especially in the downtown core of Ellensburg. What are some of the challenges that you see that we need to get to address that need to be addressed?
I don't know. There's a lot of problems downtown. I think Ellensburg's like provincial and quaint. It's safe. I moved from California to a safe place. I escaped poverty and abuse, violence, like drugs, like a horrible, horrible different environment that's normal there. We left to come to a safe place. That's why we're here. There isn't a lot of problems here. That's why I'm here. I'm glad that I'm raising my daughter here. I was raised in a different environment. It made me a different person. I'm not upset about the person that I am, but I'm definitely jaded by the world because of the environment that I grew up in. You know what I'm saying? Like I
understand.
I am glad that I'm raising my kid here. You know, they're not sheltered. They definitely know what's going on in the world. They're around me. I take them everywhere I go. But I know that they can walk to the store with their friends pretty much anytime they want to, and nothing's going to happen. Where I'm from, you cannot do that. You can't do that, right? Like, so I don't know if there's a lot of problems here. I see a couple homeless people around. I love them.
Yeah.
I love them. The dude with the bike and his dog, I love him.
Yeah.
It was
the dog on the
that
shoulder.
dude too. There's
Yeah.
two of them, right? We got two little guys, right? And one rides a bike with the trailer. He's got his dog on his back, and the other dude's got a little trike, and he's got his little dog hanging out. They're great. That isn't a problem. That's not a problem to me.
No.
You know, like I don't feel like the only problem that I see in Ellensburg, honestly, is the lack of like low income housing. The housing situation here and the cost of living here, because of the campus pushes up the rental prices for people who aren't affiliated with campus. That's a weird issue for poor people. There should be like a lot more low income housing for just regular people to live and work. Right. I mean, like that's really that's the only really issue in Ellensburg, is that the cost of living is based on Central and Seattle. Like all that going on makes it really hard for poor people to like exist in Ellensburg, just regular, so that's the only real problem that I see in Ellensburg. Other than that, it's great living here.
We've talked about that the cost of living and especially housing prices has come up as a theme with our podcast.
Right.
As one of the challenges that we are facing as a community.
Yeah, I don't know what you do about that. Like it would require maybe developers coming in and building giant complexes. But where's that land? How does that work in a way where somebody's not profiteering off homelessness? Right? I mean, you guys probably haven't been down to LA lately, but Skid Row is crazy, and nothing's happening. Seattle's really bad. Nothing's happening. Portland's really bad. Nothing's happening because I feel like the people that investigate and study and try to figure out why homelessness is happening make a lot of money doing that. They don't make a lot of money creating solutions for homelessness. They make millions of dollars telling everybody about why homelessness is happening. And they do it again and again and again and again. Meanwhile, the homeless population grows in Seattle, Portland, Chicago, LA, San Francisco. Right.
All up and down the West Coast.
So
Vancouver.
So where's the deal? So how do you small scale that to Ellensburg and be like, okay, so what is the issue? Like housing is the issue, right? Like affordable housing. But how do you do that without somebody coming in and profiteering off of it? Like it really takes a level of ethics, a moral and ethics standard with the people that are going to develop the thing. They have to be involved and invested on the ground level and not the profit level.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and then how do you find that? How do you find somebody that's like willing to like take the financial loss to do the right thing?
Yeah. Right.
We don't like. It doesn't seem like America is like set up to be that way. Profiteering is like the
capitalism.
Way, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes taking a loss for doing the right thing is usually is the right thing to do, but it's not lucrative, and a business won't do it because they're a business. They're in the business of making money, right? And so honestly, it's going to take people like sacrificing a little bit of profit to do the right thing to level the playing field. Right?
We got a little bit going on with Hope Source and some of their projects.
Yeah, Hope Source came and they converted my house from gas to electric. Right. And here's just an inefficiency story. They came and did that, and now my house is electric. I have no gas appliances whatsoever, but the gas meter was still running. Somebody was supposed to go down to the utility place, me or my landlord or Hope Source or whoever. Doesn't really matter who. But it's been running for the last year. Just a meter, not any gas, no consumption whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's been running. I paid him about $250 in meter fees until I caught it.
Really?
Hope Source caught it. Hope Source was like, "Hey, why is Jason still paying for gas? We did his thing. Have him go down there and shut that off." So I went down there and I'm like, "Hey, can you guys shut that off?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, wow, there's no consumption here. Yeah, you shouldn't be getting charged for this." And I was like, "Oh well, how much have I been charged for that?" And I'm like, "Oh well, about $240 you've given us." And I was like, "Can you guys credit that to my account?" And they were like, "Oh,
wait a minute,
that's our money now." And I was like, "Wait, you just told me it's my money and that there's been a mistake." And they were like, "Well, yeah, but somebody should have told us." And I was like, "Well, it doesn't matter if nobody told you. You've caught the mistake. I've been giving you money that you haven't been giving me anything for. That's my money." They were like, "Yeah, that's our money." And I was like, "Okay, so you're hiding behind like bureaucratic inefficiency that benefits you, right? Like this doesn't I physically gave you $250 of my actual dollars. You've done nothing. There was a mistake. We found the mistake. Can you guys correct it and just credit that to my account?" She's like, "No, that's our money." That's a problem.
Hope Source didn't take care of that for you?
Hope Source laughed at me. They were like, "They're not going to give you that money back, dude." We were making bets at Hope Source because I was like, I'm going to go down there and plead my case, and I think they might do it. And they were like, "Dude, they're not going to give you that money back." And I was like, "Yeah, but That money came from you guys. You guys helped me out, and then I paid that. And so, like, they're hiding behind a bureaucratic inefficiency to take money from Hope Source that's supposed to help poor people. And they laughed at me. I paid them again for a bill.
Wow.
I gave them $300 more after they told me that they had taken $250 from me, right? And I'm just like, wow, dude, like, and like all of them behind their glass, they laughed at the situation. I paid them more money out of my pocket, turned around and walked away. Like that hiding behind bureaucratic inefficiency in this situation is part of the problem. Right? Like there needs to be a way, a different leveling system where I can be like, look, that's actually my money. You told me to my face, you're strong-armed robbing me. And you're laughing at me that I'm not going to get this money back. There's a problem there, right? Like some leveling that playing field somehow is how the whole thing gets better.
Well, that's a great segue. We've got about 6 or so minutes left.
Yep.
And I'm curious, how would you describe? How will we know? Like you're talking about. That's a challenge, right?
Oh, how do we know? Yeah.
How do we know we're getting better?
Yeah.
In these
we
kinds
want to
of
get better.
situations?
And
I feel like you find out.
Back.
You find out when things are getting better by seeing people be examples for themselves. When nobody's following anymore. Jesus didn't want followers. Jesus wants more Jesuses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't need more followers.
That's really
Jesus
good.
didn't. Jesus didn't want followers. He didn't ask anybody to follow him. People followed him because they believed in him and they believed, right? And people like him, Simon Mungus, Buddha, whatever, everybody.
Christ consciousness of all sorts.
The universe produces people from time to time to show us how to stay on track. The universe is going towards entropy, better entropy, right? Love and communication between everybody and forgiveness is how the universe has less entropy. It sends us emissaries every once in a while to be like, hey, everybody, let's get it going, and you guys are getting too far off track. So that's how you find out when it's working, is you see more people setting their own examples and not like worrying about who's doing what and following anybody. Everybody needs to be their own best example, right? Like that's how things change. Like I changed my life that way. Like I stopped following people. I was like, I'm just going to try to be the best person that I can, whatever that is. Not the best, my best, always. And I feel like when I kind of shifted towards that, I started being better. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I became my own example. I was like, oh, well, if I want it to be like this, then I must perform at this level. And I just forced myself to do it no matter how much time it took to learn it. I learned it right and, became my own example. So I feel like that's probably everybody's got to be their own example. Stop following people, like
that's been a real theme in our podcast guest, and that be a responsible citizenry.
Right.
Not being lazy, being engaged. Yeah. Not following, not allowing someone else to form your own opinion.
Yeah.
And Ellensburg is a small enough town where someone like you can come here and be yourself.
Yeah.
You're allowed to be yourself.
Yeah.
And an individual person can make a difference.
Right.
Jason's making a difference.
That is cool about Ellensburg. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think in the last 5 years, I've probably painted more murals in this town than there are murals in this town. I wouldn't have been able to do that if there was like 10 other me's, right? So yeah, I like Ellensburg very much for that reason. It's a little lonely being a token novelty sometimes, right? But I live in the center of the state. So I go to Yakima and hang out with 15 people like me. I go out to Seattle and hang out with 20 people like me. We're around. I'm just the representative of Ellensburg, and I don't. That's fine with me.
Well,
That's totally fine with me.
Not only changing, the landscape, the art landscape, but I think sharing your insights. I remember vividly the first time that you and I really had an in-depth conversation. We were at what's the name of the winery that used to be on Clifton Crepes, right? Right.
Was it right after it was my skate shop? Yeah, it was my skate shop there. Then it was right after that.
Clifton Crepes, and my wife and I were there, and we were having a conversation about. The migration of human beings being different than what I had understood it as, like from the Beringia and the ice, the ice bridge people coming down.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about the polar ice caps, and the polar ice caps, pulling water out of the sea.
Yep.
Shallowing the
400 feet lower.
Yeah, 400 feet lower sea levels. Yep. People being to get around the equatorial band and sharing culture across the world. And I had never heard this idea, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I started learning, and I started researching, and that led me to a whole other thing. And then you and I have had many phenomenal, fascinating, interesting conversations since then. But that was the beginning of, wait a minute, I thought that I knew this. I thought that I had this thing figured out.
Yeah.
But now I know that I didn't have it figured out. And you're the person that opened that up for me. So just having the opportunity for you and I to have the conversation, you and I totally different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Completely different backgrounds. And yet, fascinating conversation. And you have informed how I operate. So I think that it's not just changing the art, you're changing people.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. John, the crazy thing is, the whole thing is, we're all the same person. The total number of minds in the universe is one.
Mm-hmm.
We are all the same person. The only thing that's different is that your perspective is as John Graff, your entire existence on this planet.
Yeah.
Likewise with you and me. But inside, we're all the same person. The universe is one mind, and it's all looking through all of us. It thinks it's different for a while because we're all in different bodies for a while, but we're all the same person. It's like, there's a point when you kind of realize that, and a bunch of the differences just kind of dissolve between everybody, because it's fun to see everybody as you. Like, wow, like I can, namaste, the term namaste, right, is literally means like, I see the soul in you that is also in me. I see you.
Yeah.
I don't see you, John Graff, right? I see me in you, right? Like that's the thing that you start to see in everybody at a point. Then the real differences start to melt away. Right, like it's not, the differences are important. It's the things that we have in common that are far more.
I totally agree with that.
Right.
Brilliant.
Traveling the world as I've done, there's far more similarities between people than differences.
Totally.
And emphasizing those similarities can really do so much to improve relationships.
Yeah. Loving the cool things that we all have in common is the point of the whole thing, right? Like it's such a cool journey to be on that way.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Oh yeah, for sure.
Great conversation.
Great conversation.
I'd love to have you consider a second conversation about the end of our conversation.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that our recording stopped, so we have the recording here on my phone. But I would love to talk to you about the oneness of humanity, because I think it's a really important concept for a lot of us to learn about.
Yeah, it's not just humanity, man. Like there's one mind in the universe. The universe is a giant organism that is self-aware. It's where we get our self-awareness from. We wouldn't have self-awareness if it wasn't provided for us somehow by the universe, like a function in the universe. The universe needs to know what's going on inside of itself. It's what we're here to do. We're an organ that the universe provided for itself to be able to know itself on a smaller scale so it can create less entropy for itself. It's pretty simple, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the bigger scope is really simple. As soon as you find that place inside of yourself to look from there, dude, the world seems really simple. It's so beautiful and simple, you know.
So part 2 is coming. You can trust on that.
Part 2 is coming. Yeah, I like that.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, thanks, Jason.
Yeah,
I appreciate
awesome.
you very much.
No worries, man. Yeah, thank you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good deal.